strengthened our credibility abroad. For policy wonk who made his mark in domestic affairs, he may be remembered for what he accomplishes abroad.
Bill Clinton has never really focused on foreign policy. Latin America, heads of state even crack jokes about it. And we're rudderless with regard to North Korea, China, Panama, and the Middle East. Could it be that he's too focused on fundraising scandals?
Boy, Bob, that's typical of you. Whenever it comes to Bill Clinton, you can't avoid the cheap shot. You hate the fact that this guy is succeeding overseas.
Larry, cheap shot.
Absolutely.
This guy, let me tell you, he doesn't have a clue. Larry, there was a recent economic conference in South America, and heads of state actually in public joked about the fact that the President of the United States...
And you as a patriotic American get a thrill out of that?
No,
I
think this is something we should tolerate.
If it were Ronald Reagan, cracking jokes about it.
Larry, tolerate. Not only do I not tolerate it, I wish the guy would wake up and try to have a foreign policy. He doesn't have a clue, Larry. It's embarrassing to the United States.
We did fundraising last week. Let's focus on the issue at hand. American troops are not dying abroad now. Northern Ireland, there's stability. They're starting to talk now.
They were dying.
Even in Israel, with the mess there is in Israel, Clinton envoy have the two sides talking.
Larry, let me tell you something. You don't have a clue, but you have guests who I think can maybe help us here.
Well, I'll admit it if you'll admit it too. All right, okay. I would like to welcome our guests. We have James Klurfeld, who's the editor of the editorial pages of Newsday and a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and Ziva Bakman-Flamhaft from the Political Science Department at Queens College. Welcome, everybody. Jim, I want to go to the Middle East right away. Is it right for Israel to be trying to assassinate anybody?
Well, I think when it comes to the question of Israel having to deal with terrorism, first of all, you have to treat Israel as a country that's at war. And I would be loath to tell any nation how it has to protect its national security. I think in this particular case, you could be very critical of Israel because they botched the attempt, and as best I can tell, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu didn't calculate what the consequences of a failure would be. And that's almost unconscionable for a country like Israel.
But yet, isn't it unconscionable just to contemplate using assassination as a tool in the conduct of foreign...
I think that's very naive, Larry. I think that's very naive.
But how about it?
Absolutely.
How about come in here? What do you think about the fact that they tried to assassinate someone?
Government should not be in the business of terrorism.
Can't government be practical? I mean, there are no circumstances at all when a government should take that kind of action.
No,
if you're at
fine.
war, there
are other means to fight a war, and as we saw in the Middle East,
so it's all right to have soldiers killed on the battlefield, but it's not all right in a war to go after the people who are pushing the button.
It's not all right. Those people who are usually assassinated are often very quickly replaced. If there's no interest, martyrdom, right? If there's no interest to
But why do you think Israel blew it? Why did Israel
Let me
blow it?
finish. Well, Netanyahu blows a lot of things.
What do you think, Jim? Why did they blow it?
Well, this was mishandled. We don't know exactly why the crew that was sent in there didn't bring it off the way they might have been able to bring it off. But I think the more serious issue, Bob, is you go into Jordan, maybe your best ally in the Mideast, and you put King Hussein in a very embarrassing position. And the end result of this is improves the position of your enemy, Hamas, and undercuts the position of your friend, King Hussein, and if not your friend, at least the person you're trying to work with in the Mideast, Yasser Arafat.
But doesn't it always? Assassination and martyrdom, doesn't it always improve the hand of your opponent?
It probably doesn't. What I'm saying, Larry, is that if you're not an Israeli citizen, and you're not someone who has to live with the terror of walking into your capital of Jerusalem and wondering whether somebody walking towards you has a bomb planted on them and is going to blow up you and your loved ones, I just don't think we're in a position to tell Israel that they should or should not do these things. This is a question of national security and survival.
Look what happened with the Batch assassination attempt. It backfired like it always did. Look what happened with Ayib, the engineer last year. It invited retaliation. It invited repeated terrorist attacks in Israel. And the engineer was always replaced by another one.
Is a
very
nasty and brutal place. You play by, the rules of Hamas, which is a town in Syria that when Assad had trouble with the town, he went to Hama and he destroyed the whole town. They play by different rules than we play by, and the Israelis need to be able to survive in that world. I think you can make the case against assassination, but what I'm saying is, unless you're an Israeli citizen and you have to live with the consequences of terrorism.
Ziva, you were an Israeli
I'm an
citizen for a very long
Israeli
time.
citizen.
Well, then I give you the floor.
I've been living here for a long time, but I'm also an Israeli citizen who paid the price of war, I might say. And I've been speaking to a lot of Israeli. My current work is dealing with women and the consequences of war and bereavement. And I can tell you that a lot of people share my views.
Okay, what should Bill Clinton have told the Prime Minister of Israel after this failure to assassinate this person? Now, you're Bill Clinton. You pick up the phone. I think he should do that. I don't know if he does. What should he say?
I think you should not do that. I think that by doing
Do you think
that...
Bill Clinton should have lectured to the Prime Minister?
He should have lectured the Prime Minister a long time ago, and he's getting it right, because he has started to lecture. It's too late, but he has started to lecture.
What did he lecture?
Well, all
Well, he
right.
has envoys, Bob. I mean,
Bill Clinton, when is the last
He doesn't
time
have
he
to do
made
it.
any substantive comment on the Middle East?
He doesn't have to do it himself. He has an trust to it for him.
But he doesn't
has
know
all
how to
tried
do it himself. That's
Well, I
the
think
problem.
he's getting it. I think he's getting it.
We're asking the wrong question. The right question, it seems to me, is Netanyahu up to the job of being Prime Minister of Israel? That's something Bill Clinton can't control, obviously. But it seems to me it's a serious question in Israel.
Do you think he's up to it?
I have grave doubts about it, Bob, because his judgment's being called into question.
But Bill Clinton almost, about as openly as a president probably ever has, took a side in the last election. I mean, if he had had his druthers, he would not have had Benjamin Netanyahu as Prime Minister of Israel.
Well, that's true, and it's made it more difficult for Clinton to deal with Netanyahu now. You know, politicians don't forget who supported him and who didn't support
And Bob, you were very, very critical of Bill Clinton when you did the show on the Mideast back during.
Yes, I thought he came out, but
involved.
that shows how amateur.
But you're trying to have it both ways
Larry,
now.
no, it isn't, Larry. That shows you how amateur land Bill Clinton is. The fact that he would take sides so blatantly. Let me turn
Bush
to it.
determined the election in Israel in 1992.
But he did it a lot more
when he
subtly.
refused. No, he refused.
Well, he had
to
Ollie
tell
North
Bill
working out of the basement, Bob. Why not?
Let's go to another. Let's go to another area of the world, and that's the area of Latin America.
Wait, we want to leave the Mideast where Bill Clinton's been doing a pretty good job. He's done
Pretty good job. I mean,
in
I
the
think
midst of
he's
all
all
this
in.
horrible stuff, he's got the people talking.
Larry, come on. He doesn't have it. It's the fact that Albright was over there, and you think, well,
Let's look at what Clinton has done in the Mideast, especially with Israel and the Palestinian problem. Madeleine Albright's strategy when she came in was to ignore the problem. She saw that they couldn't make much progress, and she felt she'd just stay out of it. I think that was a serious mistake in judgment. Because in the Mideast, inevitably, if you don't try to push the ball up the hill, it falls down the hill. And that's what's been happening. Further down the hill, exactly. So I think Clinton did some good things in his first term, although it was basically the Israelis and the Palestinians got together on their own. He got into the picture, from the Oslo agreement. But I think Madeleine Albright waited too long to get involved. I think she's playing catch-up now, and she has a very difficult situation on her hands, because the best she can do, I think, is to keep the status quo.
Well, she can pursue an activist foreign policy, and I think the Clinton administration has started to do that, and she should put pressure both on the Israelis and the Palestinians. Carter did that, Bush did that, and it worked, and it will work now. Start put pressure. And I agree that she started to do that a little too late, but I think they're getting it right now.
But doesn't it help if you have a president of the United States who truly understands the fundamentals, the history of our foreign policy? And that's what Bill Clinton
like Ronald Reagan?
Ronald Reagan, but had some very good people around him.
That's not
He had good cue cards.
That's what he had.
Hey, at the risk of insulting my guest, how about George Bush? George Bush and Bill Clinton, you know, Jim, don't even compare in terms of foreign policy.
He's doing the best that he can with a Congress that has very little, there's no appetite for an activist foreign policy.
Okay,
Now-
Congress raises a good point, though, because right now Congress is going to deal with NATO expansion. And I don't know that we have a lot of disagreement here on that issue. What Congress is about to expand NATO, to let Poland, Hungary, and the Czech
Well,
Republic.
what Congress has to do, Larry, is to approve a treaty, and that's going to take a two-thirds vote of the Congress.
Right.
So I think it's far from certain that they're going to get that two-thirds vote. The vote won't come to early next spring. And there are a lot of serious questions that still have to be asked about whether this NATO expansion makes sense. And here we put together a panel, and we probably have 4 people here on this panel who think this is not a good idea.
I don't know. Bob might.
Ziva, let's find out. Why do you think Bill Clinton took this approach? Why did he go after NATO expansion at this time?
Well, first of all, it was a leadership. I think it was a leadership role with
Because he wanted to play macho, I'm the leader?
Well, with the Congress, domestic politics, yes. I'm a leader and I'm leading Congress.
Playing to the polls, playing to other...
Right.
Well, which part are you talking about?
popular.
The POLESs or the POLLs?
Both. With Bill
right.
Clinton, it probably was both.
It helped Eastern European countries. It probably so that helped. I don't think it's a good policy. I think that there is no reason to do that. If we look back at the idea of NATO originally, what was the original idea for NATO to exist? There is no reason to
Jim,
explain.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but Jim, don't we have a debt? Don't we have an obligation to redress what basically the Allies did to Poland and to Hungary, Czech Republic, and other countries by bringing them back into the West?
The fact is, they are in the West. These are fledgling democracies with developing capitalistic economies, and they're going to be part of the West. The issue is not whether they need to be in NATO. No, not necessarily. This is a policy that was rooted in domestic politics. Bill Clinton got involved in this in the 1996 campaign. Now you have Madeleine Albright, who I think actually, though, believes this is the right thing to do. Let's remember she is an East European herself, and I think she has an emotional attachment to this. This is a policy that, in a sense, if you appeal to morality and say, isn't it right to bring them in now, you might say yes, but what you have to do when you're talking about foreign policy is this in the American interest, but our vital interest to do.
But it's not just morality.
This is fuzzy thinking.
Henry Kissinger, the ultimate realpolitik politician, is also in favor of this.
Right.
As a way of containing the Soviet Union. What's wrong with that?
Because I think it's...
I don't think morality is...
Well, it does with Madeleine Albright.
Okay, let's just take for a minute.
Take Kissinger's argument for a second, because it goes to the heart of the question about how do you treat the Soviet Union, which is also a fledgling democracy, which has a lot of key issues on the table, including arms control issues. And at this point, what we're doing, in my opinion, is we're telling the Russians, we don't trust you at all. We're going to treat you the same way we treated you when you were the Soviet Union and you were the enemy. That undercuts our allies in Russia. It also makes this an issue between us and forces to the back burner the important issues of trying to deal with, for instance, the loose nukes.
Let me take this another dimension. We're talking about NATO expansion. What impact does that have on the situation in Bosnia?
Currently, I don't think it would have any impact. I think that Clinton and Albright announcement that American forces in NATO would stay expansion of NATO.
Even though they had previously...
Well, it's the opposite, Bob. It's the effect that Bosnia will have on the Senate vote on NATO expansion that's the relevant issue. What the administration fears is that things will go badly in Bosnia over the next 6 months before the vote is taken in the Senate. And therefore the senators will say, why are we expanding NATO when we can't even handle the situation in Bosnia? And that'll wind up in a negative vote.
Most of your criticisms of policy in Bosnia are maybes and mayhaps. We've had, 2 years where basically very few people have been killed. They still hate each other. That's a problem they're going to have to deal with. But why wouldn't you call Bosnia a success so far for the Clintons?
You'd be on pretty shaky ground if you want to, at this point, say it's been a success. Foreign policy is managing things. So I give Clinton credit. For the last couple of years, they've done a better job of managing things in Bosnia. The question is, how do we eventually get out of there? Don't forget, he went to the American people 2 years ago and said, we'll be out of there in 1 year. Now, it's been another full year that we've kept our troops in there. There's been very little real reconciliation in Bosnia.
Well, because what he's doing, he's not only managing conflict. First of all, he was engaged in conflict resolution, and now he's trying the situation permits to implement that conflict resolution.
Nobody thought it was easy. What is the goal? What is the goal of policy in Bosnia? I don't know what it is.
You don't know what? Well, first
of all,
to create
stability. Does he want a partition, or does he want to try to put Bosnia back together again?
Well, what he wants, if I understand it correctly, is to put Bosnia together again.
And is that possible?
What he really wants is stability. Is it possible? Nobody ever thought that it would be easy to get the people out of Dayton, and 1, 2, 3, the peace process is going to succeed, or the implementation of peace is going to
1, 2,
succeed.
3, we're now 2 years. So this is 5, 6,
It is
7, 8.
obligated to stay even more than 2 years or 3 years. They have to stay, American forces, together with NATO forces, have to stay as long as it takes to see the implementation.
Wait a second.
To see the implementation of a peace agreement that they push.
We don't know yet whether what they're pushing for is what they outlined in Dayton, which is to unify Bosnia again, which seems a really long shot, or whether or whether they're really going to look at some type of partition. I'd be willing to say, let's keep we can't pull the troops out of there precipitously, but I want to know, why are we keeping the troops there? Under what conditions will they leave?
Let me pick up on something
It's too early
But that's going to end up
change the policy. I think 2 years after such a bloody event such as Bosnia, it's 2 years. It's too early to raise your hand and say, I'm leaving, or I'm setting a date. I think he's getting it right. I think he's getting it
Bob,
right.
this is what makes me nervous. We've begun to take sides in an internal civil dispute between the Bosnian Serb forces there, and this becomes so complex. And it seems I'm very uncomfortable with
we're trying to arrest a war criminal.
But
I'm not so sure that's a bad thing.
isn't also part of
Let me
it.
say one thing. The idea that the intervenors, those who intervene, do not take side is a myth. They cannot.
But you better be prepared if you want to intervene to pay the consequences. For instance, when the United States went into Lebanon and we finally intervened, started to take sides, we then had a bomb planted in the Marine barracks and we got out of there.
Be a leader, you have to take chances.
Okay,
Let me just follow up.
I want to go.
My question is whether the American people are willing to take chances and to pay the price those chances might create.
Jim, aside from the promise that Clinton made, and I don't make light of that because presidents should keep promises, but aside from the fact that he set a deadline maybe he shouldn't have set, we have had troops, for example, in Korea for years and years and years and years. If we left tomorrow, there'd be hell to pay there. What's wrong with at least a small American presence as part of NATO, with a lot of other countries involved, being there indefinitely? What's wrong with that?
Well, I think in a situation like that, which is not stable, I'm not sure you want to make an indefinite commitment. And first of all, if you make an indefinite commitment, those parties are not going to be willing to get together because they're always going to rely on us being there. When I'm not saying that the United States should not have some type of follow-on force there after June of '98. What I'm saying is I want some definition from this administration as to what the policy is and where we're going with it. I happen to think
there is no definition. There is no policy. It's just playing it by the seat
Well,
of your
that's not
pants.
true. The policy is to keep Bosnia as an integral unit as much as it can, to disarm those militias and to resettle refugees and to do those things that the Dayton Agreement
And then
called
leave.
for.
You know what? One of the things
And
that
have
really
it fought
bothers
back all
See,
over.
no,
I know what really bothers you, Bob.
What bothers?
Bill Clinton has succeeded in an aspect of foreign policy, the economic front, using trade as part of your foreign policy in ways that Republicans only dreamed of. And this guy's getting it done, and that bothers
Larry,
you.
it doesn't bother me. But let me tell you,
Because our
he
foreign
took
policy
one
in China.
position. Larry, he took one position in the campaign on China, took another position as president.
Yeah,
Took
right.
one position in the campaign in Bosnia, took another position after. He's inconsistent. He doesn't have a clue.
No.
And now I'm going to change the subject to an area that I tried to get into before, and that's the issue of Latin America. I met recently with a representative of the Chilean government who said that the Chilean government was furious over the attitude that Bill Clinton had taken up to that time on pursuing fast track for Chile into NAFTA. What is wrong with this president? Finally, he comes up with a program. The minute he comes up with it, the Senate passes it. Why can't Clinton follow through on the commitments that he makes overseas?
Why can I don't think that he doesn't follow through.
I wonder if Larry,
I don't.
Larry, you don't understand the question. At the heart of it is the fact that this man was joked about at a recent economic conference in South America because people can't count on him. There's no credibility. You talk about credibility. There is no credibility of this president overseas.
We're going to have to reverse sides here for a second, Bob, because the one thing I think everybody gives Bill Clinton credit for is putting through NAFTA, and then
But with regard to Chile, he slept on it. He kept it quiet.
Chile's one country. It's a special.
It was a special
The fact
situation.
is, first of all, foreign people are always laughing at American presidents. They don't like the big power. They don't like
not as much
they don't like the big. They don't like the big power.
They love the Vegas, they love the Pool, they love the
Come on, Bob.
public jokes in the United
irrelevant.
States.
It's irrelevant.
It's not irrelevant
Come on.
because
The Germans laughed at Ronald
it
Reagan.
is the question
The
of
real-
whether or not
the real
the
issue-
President of
let me
the
tell
United States has credibility overseas, and he doesn't have credibility.
Well,
He doesn't have a clue.
Hey,
I think the real issue
let's
here.
agree to disagree here and then move on to the real
No,
issue.
the real issue is a fast track, in my opinion, is a good thing. I think actually the most outstanding aspect, of Bill Clinton's foreign policy has been the economic aspect of it. I think he recognizes we're in an information age, we're in an international age, and he has shown the courage to split with members of his own party, with a large segment of his own party, including organized labor over this. I give him a high mark.
But I belatedly he came out with a policy with regard to fast tracking NAFTA for Chile. And why?
Well,
Why did
do you
it take
consider
so
them
long?
silly? It
Why?
pursues a classical liberal
Well, he hasn't gone as fast.
economic policy
Bob's got
that is
friends in
going
Chile.
to...
What can I tell you? You should have punched him in the mouth when they badmouthed the president. Good pitch out of
Somebody
American
did.
like you.
Somebody did, right?
That's
You're
right.
He's pursuing an economic policy that I think is going to enhance American economic power in the world.
Okay, let me come to another area of South and Central America. With regard to Panama, for at least 5 years now, the issue of U.S. military bases post-1999 has been on the table. They're probably no closer, and now they've turned into some kind of a drug center, no longer military bases. Does Bill Clinton understand that there's a Panama Canal and there's a Panama?
Well, I think you are, instead of concentrating on his successes, you're concentrating on his
No, I'm trying to raise legitimate...
failure, quote unquote.
All right, why hasn't something happened here? Why hasn't it done something?
Well, he's done other things in other places, and don't pick on him where he is.
He's done something in Bosnia, which has a real strategic interest to the United States, right?
Yes,
As
I think
compared to the
so.
Panama
I
Canal.
think so. It's gonna increase stability in Europe.
Bob just wants to make sure that the Panama Canal is free for his friends with their yacht. That's what he wants.
No, not free for my friends with the
I
yacht.
mean, that's
All I
something
can
more
say to you,
important. I
well, let me
think
ask
there
you
are more
this.
important issues.
One out of
In
every
Europe,
four
in the
ships,
Middle East.
one out of every 4 ships entering and leaving New York Harbor each day transits the Panama Canal. This man doesn't have a clue. 70% of all the cargo in Philadelphia is through the Panama Canal.
Maybe we should tell our viewers that you were once chairman of the Panama Canal
I have a
Commission.
little knowledge on that, but I also know that there's nothing being done. There's a vacuum there.
Well, if you are right, and I agree with you, but if you are right, no American president has it all right in terms of foreign policy.
But if
You
pretty
win
close
some,
to home,
you
you think
lose
you'd have
some.
something
Well,
right.
but there are more important
Well, let me ask-
areas in the world that are much more vulnerable than Panama currently, and he is getting it right in these areas.
I'll let Bob handle the Panama Canal. I'm interested in your opinion here on another, I think a very difficult issue, which is France's decision to allow one of its largest companies, Total, to sign an oil contract for really gas exploration in Iran. And we have a law passed by Senator Alphonse D'Amato, which says that when you do something with a country such as Iran, which has been identified as a terrorist state, we're going to impose sanctions on our ally France for agreeing to this. And the French are really wanting to stick it to us on this because...
They always did.
Right.
Well, they always did. The issue with sanctions has always been a tricky issue. Sanctions don't always work, they rarely work, and they work only when all the parties share the same interest with regard to sanctions. NATO crisis within the NATO alliance, always existed with issues like that. The French
for Libya.
Okay, let me just, on the same subject, both give a quick response. An aircraft carrier on the way to the Middle East right now because of skirmishes between Iran and Iraq. Is that going to lead to something? Is this the next tinderbox we have to worry about?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I don't
What do you
think,
think?
I don't think so either, but I think it's time to start changing our policy towards Iran.
How so?
You have a lot of turmoil in Iran, democratic turmoil. They threw out their last president. They have a new president. I think the Ayatollahs are basically finished there. The question is what comes next in Iran, and we ought to be on the side of the
Eva,
Democrats.
final comment?
I agree that the United States should review at least its policy on Iran.
So we end in
We're out of time.
attitude.
We're out of time. I'd like to thank our guests. First, Ziva Bakman-Flamhaft, Queens College, and James Klurfeld, the editor of the editorial pages of Newsday. Larry, your boss did pretty well,
Picky,
even though I disagreed with him.
Well, that's why we pay him the upper middle bucks.
I see, Larry.
Yeah.
But Larry, let me tell you though, go through this. You can't dismiss foreign policy failures here and there and then say that this
I'm not.
man is.
I think that,
credibility.
listen, I'm an old baseball player. You hit 350, you're in the Hall of Fame. I think
But that
presidents have to do a lot better than that, but they never bat 1,000. I think this guy has begun to balance, he's come up the learning curve, made some stupid promises during his campaign. He's come up the learning curve, balancing real politics and field politics.
What we're going to have to see, though, Larry, he's going to make a trip through South America in the next several weeks. Question is, what's going to happen on that trip? How is he going to be received? Does he understand where he is? He has never in his life traveled south of Mexico and the Caribbean.
Bill Clinton is going to do well in South America, just as he's done well with China, because the key to foreign policy in South America has nothing to do with warrior princesses, as we called Madeleine Albright. It's economic policy. And that's where this president has done well. You should be voting for him.
Larry,
he's a Republican's dream.
Larry, you say he's done well in economic policy?
Foreign policy, absolutely.
Regional trade pacts have been sprung up throughout Central and South America because Bill Clinton has failed to move as aggressively as he said he would do on NAFTA.
Big ticket items,
Larry,
big focus. This guy's
Larry,
okay.
Larry, I'm going to cut you off so you can thank everyone.
All right, great. We really are out of time, no fooling. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time when we face off.